Welcome to the Spotlight video using procurement contracts. This Spotlight provides an in-depth overview of the new features delivered in Update Images 30 and 32. We'll start with an overview of the new features, followed by how to configure them. Then we'll show multiple demonstrations on how to use these features in your procurement process. We end the Spotlight with a review by highlighting the feature benefits to your organization and then close with where to find additional resources. Let's start with a feature overview. Procurement contracts provides a wide range of functionality to ensure compliance through the establishment of supplier and item pricing controls. Using procurement contracts can prevent overspending and provides notifications to alert users based on configurable spend thresholds and dates used for contract renewal and expiration purposes. In Update Image 30, we introduced 5 fundamental enhancements to procurement contracts. Manufacturer contracts are commonly negotiated directly with the manufacturer. Distributor contracts leverage group purchasing organization agreements to receive price discounts. To this end, we introduced new contract process options to support manufacturer and distributor contracts. Manufacturer and distributor contracts allow you to store manufacturer-based pricing, provide flexible distributor markup or markdown percentages, and use service-level agreements and authored documents from supplier contract management. The system also tracks released amounts and quantities and sends notifications for approaching thresholds and dates. All of this allows you to manage a purchasing activity and pricing with manufacturers and distributors. Flexible Ship-to pricing allows you to establish pricing by business unit, ship-to, or a group of ship-tos called contract domain. By reorganizing the contract data entry page and using contract styles, you can tailor the contract entry page to expose or hide fields, links, and functionality to streamline the data entry process. Items that contain UPN Information or GTIN are now stored on all procure-to-pay transactions. You can establish item pricing for Punchout suppliers and configure your system to use the contract price, the Punchout price, or the Punchout price when it's lower. A discrepancy report is available that provides an audit of differences. In Update Image 32, you can track and analyze paid and expensed spend amounts, including contract versus non-contract spend amounts, along with several other facets. Let's discuss each feature in a little more detail. When purchasing an item from a supplier, that supplier may or may not manufacture the item. Let's look at a diagram showing manufacturer and distributor relationships and see how PeopleSoft procurement contracts handles these relationships. In some cases, the supplier is actually a distributor of items who purchases these items from manufacturers. In this example, supplier Carbonol is a distributor who provides goods from manufacturer A and B. Offens and Major is also a distributor who provides goods from manufacturer A, B, and C. In PeopleSoft procurement contracts, you'll use the new Distributor Contract Process option to create distributor contracts for Carbonol and Offens and Major. Then you'll use another new contract process option, Manufacturer, to create manufacturer contracts for manufacturer A, B, and C. Then you'll associate the manufacturer contract to their related distributor. Notice that manufacturer contracts can be associated to one or more distributor contracts. When a manufacturer is also a distributor, PeopleSoft procurement contracts allows you to create a manufacturer contract to purchase items directly from that manufacturer supplier or direct purchase. Manufacturer and distributor contracts use the same standard process as other procurement contracts and integrate with PeopleSoft purchasing, e-procurement, and supplier contract management. When you set up your manufacturer and distributor contracts, you define contract dates as you do for all procurement contracts. For manufacturer contracts, you establish contract items, the base price, and spend thresholds. Each distributor can have their own markup or markdown percentage, as well as start and end dates. Using our flexible pricing feature, you can establish markups by business unit, ship to, or contract domain. You can also associate a distributor contract with service level agreements. Spend tracking is available at the manufacturer and distributor level, along with contract and non-contract analysis. Lastly, notifications can be triggered based on renewal or expiration dates for both distributor and manufacturer contracts. The flexible ship-to pricing feature allows you to establish pricing by business unit, ship-to location, or contract domain. Contract domain is a new term. Think of it as a regional control where you set up various ship-to locations and link them to a domain area. Let's say you are a healthcare organization and you purchase the same good, but the cost varies between hospital, clinic, region, or physical location. With flexible ship-to pricing, you can create a manufacturer base price for your United States business unit. Then set up your distributor markup or markdown based on the hospital or clinic using the ship-to markup, or region using contract domain. You can also use this feature to vary pricing for an item's base price on a manufacturing contract. For example, with some medicines the base price varies by region or domestic, or if shipping internationally. We also made changes to the contract entry page to enhance the user experience. We redesigned the contract entry page to arrange data into 2 columns. The new page arrangement allows you to expose or hide features on the page while preserving a consistent look and feel. Contract styles allow you to configure the functionality you want to enable or disable. This allows you to decide what information to display to your end users and will streamline data entry, which improves the user experience. You can configure what to show in the contract header as well as what to show on contract lines and so forth. For example, to hide the corresponding fields on the contract entry page, deselect the control fields on the contract style setup page such as agreements, price adjustments, and PO defaults. By deselecting the checkboxes on the contract style page, you can see that the corresponding links are no longer available to the user. Next in our overview is storing UPN information on all procure-to-pay transactions, such as e-procurement, purchasing, receiving, and payables. Previously, procure-to-pay transactions only displayed UPN information. Now this information is stored in the system and can be queried for compliance purposes. Like other procurement contracts, UPN information can be stored on manufacturing and distributor contracts. Including UPN information on a procurement contract reduces maverick spending. The system searches for and matches a contract based on the UPN information, even when ordering by description. Next, let's discuss the new Punchout and Adhoc item pricing features. Suppliers are typically responsible for updating and maintaining your Punchout items. So how confident are you that suppliers are providing the agreed-upon pricing? When using contracts for Punchout and Adhoc item requests, the system searches for item-based attributes such as manufacturing ID or UPN to find the correct contract. New Punchout pricing options lets you set up the contract to always use the contract price, always use the Punchout price, or use the Punchout price if lower. The system default is to always use the contract price. By storing the Punchout or contract price, you can create an audit trail. You can run a report to view and discuss price differences with your supplier if there are discrepancies. Payment spend analysis rounds out our final feature covered in this spotlight. Later, we'll demonstrate the pivot grid that joins payment data with procurement data and discuss some ways you can filter and pivot this data to analyze paid and expensed spend amounts. Now we'll review the setup pages that you'll need to consider when configuring the system to take advantage of these new features. Let's discuss the setup options that impact these components. The Set Controls Contracts component is used to define options available to contracts using a given set ID. Before using the new Update Image 30 features, you should consider the options that we've added to this page. Use the Track Changes option to track any changes made to contracts, who made the changes, and when. 2 new contract process options are available to support change tracking of manufacturer and distributor contracts. Add these to the templates grid if you want to track changes to manufacturing and distributor contracts. New options are available if you want to use procurement contracts for Punchout and other ad hoc item requests. When ordering, you can match Punchout or other ad hoc items that have description-only contract line items with the new controls in the line matching section. The Punchout items option indicates whether description-only contract line items are eligible to use on a contract line containing a Punchout item. Select this option so that the Punchout pricing appears on the contract. The Other Description-Only Items option indicates whether description-only contract line items are eligible to use on an ad hoc order line. If selected, the item ID does not need to be entered on a contract line. Instead, the system checks for a match using the category and alternate item identifier, such as Supplier Item ID, Manufacturer Item ID, or UPN ID. In order to capture spend metrics by manufacturer, the system needs a way to associate the manufacturer to a supplier. Use the Supplier ID field to identify a ghost supplier and enter it as the default reporting supplier. We call this a ghost supplier because you will not have transactions against this supplier. It is used for the fluid payment spend analysis feature only. The fields in the Contract Usage Options section allow you to control access and pricing by business unit, contract domain, and Shipto location during contract entry. For example, when creating a distributor contract, these fields determine the access and pricing of business units, contract domains, and Shipto locations. Later, we will demonstrate how to create distributor and manufacturer contracts, and we'll show how these options are used to control access and markups. Auto-numbering for manufacturer and distributor contracts is now available. As described in the overview, the Contract Style page allows you to configure what fields, controls, and functionality to show during contract entry. Contract styles are associated with a structure. The structure field correlates to contract structures supported by the system for the various contract process options, such as distributor, manufacturer, and purchase order. When you select a value such as purchase order, the page automatically refreshes to display only the fields applicable to contracts with a purchase order contract process option. Deselect the field controls to disable fields, links, and features that you do not want the user to see on the contract entry page. During the demonstration, we'll show where to select the style ID during contract entry. These examples show the field controls related to distributor and manufacturer structure types. On the Contract Style page, the Usage Controls section allows you to manage user access to contract fields using the available field control options. These subsections correspond to a section on the contract entry page. For each section, you enable or disable section-level fields, links, and functionality on the contract entry page. You can make changes to contract styles up to the point of saving a procurement contract as a transaction. If you need to make changes after the style has been used by a transaction, you can create a new style. You can also inactivate the original style if you no longer wish to use it for future transactions. Let's discuss the changes that end users can make to their preferences. From the User Preferences Procurement page, use the Contract Process link to access the Contract Process page and define contract process preferences for a user. For contract entry, each user can set up a default process option using the Process Option field. This value defaults when the user adds a new contract using the contract entry page. You can also specify whether each section within the contract entry page should be expanded or collapsed when the user accesses the page. During the feature overview, we discussed how you can use the Shipto pricing feature to set pricing by business unit, Shipto, and contract domain. To create a contract domain, access the Region Codes page. On the Region Codes page, Use the Ship to Location link to access the region code Ship to Locations page. Use this page to add all Ship to locations for your contract domain. The Manufacturers page is used to define manufacturer and supplier information for the manufacturers of items that you purchase. We've added an option to indicate that a manufacturer is a direct purchase manufacturer. When you select the Direct Purchase checkbox, the Supplier and Supplier ID fields appear. After you have established the manufacturer-supplier relationship, you can create a direct purchase manufacturer contract. Next, we'll demonstrate how to set up distributor and manufacturer contracts, and then how to link the two contracts to each other. We'll also demonstrate how to set up a direct purchase contract. To create a distributor contract, go to the Contract Entry page. For our example, we've selected DST in the Style ID field, which is for contract style. This also happens to be the default style for distributor contracts. Distributor automatically defaults into the Contract Process option field. On the Contract Entry contract page, select a supplier. You can create a distributor contract for any supplier that is open for ordering. For this example, we've selected Wisher Scientific. Notice the supplier ID and supplier name are automatically populated. Enter a primary contact if there is a primary person you communicate with for this distributor. Use the optional Supplier Contract Reference field to store the supplier contract number or some other identifier which the supplier uses to identify this contract. If a master contract is associated with this distributor contract, enter the ID in the Master Contract ID field. Enter your distributor contract's begin, expiration, and renewal dates, which we've done in this example. Use the markup % field to default a percentage for any markup elsewhere on the contract. The percentage can be positive or negative. We've entered a 3% markup as the default for this contract. Like other procurement contracts, distributor contracts support agreements and supplier contract management documents, which can be accessed using the Contract Header Agreement link. You can also have one or more users notified when the contract needs to be renewed or is about to expire using the Date Notifications link. The Corporate Contract checkbox is used to indicate that the contract can be used with any business unit. If the contract is for specific business units only, then deselect this option and specify the business units in the Contract Control section. This checkbox is selected by default. The Contract Control section allows you to specify the purchase order business unit, contract domain, and ship to. These controls determine how to limit a contract's usage and pricing. For example, if control by ship to is specified, a contract is limited to specific ship to locations, and each of these might have different markup or markdown percentages. These sections appear depending on whether you enable access during set control contract setup. Similarly, the markup settings you establish during set control contract setup governs whether the markup or markdown percentage column appears for each control type. When a manufacturer contract links to a distributor contract, the contract control details are copied to the manufacturer contract as default data. You can override the copied details on the manufacturer contract. You can provide details for all three contract control sections, but only the section matching a particular manufacturer contract's control type is relevant. We'll provide more details regarding this last point in a later demonstration. Let's add a few markups. Notice that although this distributor contract is also a corporate contract, you can still make refinements in the business unit section. For example, if the standard 3% markup is not applicable to the Australian and Belgium business units, use the Contract Control section to set specific markups for them. We've added a 2.75% markup for the General Hospital contract domain, and the WonderCare warehouse shipping location requires a 2.5% markup. Let's review the Manufacturer section. The Manufacturer section shows the relationship between the distributor contract and the manufacturer contracts. As you may remember from our overview, a distributor contract can be associated to many manufacturer contracts, and you establish the relationship on the manufacturer contract. This is an example of a newly created distributor contract where the relationship to a manufacturer contract is not established. To get a better understanding of this section, let's exit out of this contract and view an existing distributor contract where manufacturer relationships have been established. This is an example of an existing distributor contract for Often and Major. Let's scroll down to the manufacturer section of the contract and view the manufacturer relationships established for Often and Major. The distributor contract is associated with 4 manufacturers. Above the list of relationships, you see total released amount. When you release a purchase order, the released amount and quantity values are tracked by the system, so you can track the total amount spent by distributor. The Details tab shows the released amounts by manufacturer. The sum of the released amounts by manufacturer add up to the total released amount for this distributor. You can drill down to view the details of each manufacturer contract that is associated to this distributor contract. The manufacturer contract page displays the items listed on the contract. The distributor contract section displays all the distributor contracts associated to the corresponding manufacturer contract. From this drill down, you can view the actual markup or markdown percentages used for this manufacturer contract. You can also view documents associated with each manufacturer contract linked to this distributor, or view the markup details for the manufacturer contract's perspective. Next, we'll discuss manufacturer contracts. If you are adding a new manufacturer contract, you would select a Style ID, select Manufacturer for the Contract Process option, and then click Add. For our demonstration, we'll view an existing manufacturer contract. This manufacturing contract is for Beston Scientific. You can tell that it is a manufacturing contract from the Contract Process option field. The contract style that was used to tailor this manufacturing contract page appears in this field. Note that multi-currency is disabled for this contract style. The Manufacturer ID field identifies the manufacturer for this contract. For a manufacturer contract, the control type values that appear in the control type field depend on the access and markup settings defined during Set Control Contract Setup. In this example, Business Unit, Contract Domain, and Shipto markups are enabled. Therefore, all 3 values appear in the control type field. For the manufacturer contract, use the control type field to determine how to control pricing. You can only choose 1 value per contract. For this contract, price is controlled by Shipto. This value affects the functionality of the distributors section of this page, which we'll discuss shortly. Earlier, we discussed how to configure Punchout items to match description-only contract line items. When enabled during Set Control Contract Setup, the Punchout pricing option appears on the contract entry page. Determine which price to use by selecting the contract price, the Punchout price, or the Punchout price when lower. The default is always use the contract price. Regardless of the value you choose, the system tracks pricing discrepancies. Like other procurement contracts, the Amounts Summary section gives you a running balance of order released amounts against the maximum not to exceed amount you specified for this contract. The Distributor section is where you add relationships with distributor contracts. A manufacturer contract can be associated to any number of distributor contracts. This particular contract has 3 distributor contract relationships. Use the Priority field to define the priority for each distributor contract. 1 represents top priority. Keep in mind that if you have a valid manufacturer contract and a valid standard procurement contract with the same begin date, the system always selects the manufacturer contract over the standard procurement contract during the order process. When you add a distributor contract relationship, the system carries the default markup percentage from the distributor contract. If the manufacturer has an agreement with the distributor to use a different default markup value, you would enter the override value here. For this demonstration, We'll modify the markup for the third row from 3% to 2.75%. The system also brings over control details from the distributor contract. Recall that this manufacturer contract control type is Shipto. Therefore, drilling down to view distributor contract details only displays information that matches the manufacturer's control type. In other words, even though the distributor contract includes control details for business units and contract domains, only the Shipto details appear because the control type is set to Shipto. Initially, this page displays the distributor's default markup or markdown percent for each Shipto. If the manufacturer has an agreement with the distributor for different Shipto markup values, you would enter the override value here. Keep in mind that the markup markdown percentage column only displays here and on the main page when markups for Shiptos are enabled during set control contract setup. Next, let's take a closer look at the distributor contract relationship. Note that the first distributor contract is a direct purchase contract. The Details tab displays the direct purchase distributor's name. Direct purchase contract relationships are associated alongside non-direct purchase contracts in the Distributor section. Let's walk through the steps needed to establish a direct purchase contract relationship. First, set up Beston Scientific as a direct purchase manufacturer. We covered this during manufacturer setup. Next, create a distributor contract for Beston Scientific. Then, add the distributor contract for Beston Scientific in this section to establish the direct purchase contract relationship. The system recognizes this relationship as a direct purchase contract from the Options setting. Let's return to the Summary Information tab. For each relationship in the Distributor Contract Information section, there are additional drill downs to view the distributor contract. If you are using Supplier Contract Management and an authored document exists, you can access the document. You can also navigate directly to the Document Management page. In addition to the released amount for this contract, you can also view the individual released amounts by distributor contract. Take note of the released amount shown in the Amount Summary section. Also note the zero released amount for the third distributor contract, which is for distributor contract WDS 000004. The Details tab shows that the distributor contract is for Often and Major. Later in this demonstration, we will process a purchase order for Often and Major, then return to this page to see the updated released amounts. Use the Contract Items section to enter items as you would for any standard procurement contract. Click the Item Search link to view the Item Search Criteria page. This search window includes UPN ID. You can store UPN information for your contract items. The information defaults from your item master. To facilitate contract matching during the order process, provide the manufacturer's item ID, GTIN information, or both on description-only contract items. Requisition and purchase orders that purchase items for the contract pick up item-related details from the contract, including UPN information. The default schedule shows you the base price for each item on your contract. The standard unit of measure for the item appears in the STD/ULM column. The unit of measure column shows the contract unit of measure. This standard unit of measure automatically defaults when you add items to the contract. This column allows you to set a different UOM. Use it in conjunction with the Use Contract Base Price to define the item base price for this contract. Use the Released Amounts tab to view and track item level spend pertaining to all distributor contracts for this manufacturer contract. For each contract item, you have the option of setting a minimum line amount. For example, let's say the supplier requires a $500 minimum order to purchase coronary stents at the contract price. We'll enter $500 in the minimum line amount field. The maximum line amount field allows you to set a maximum indicating how much can be spent for this contract line item. The total amount for all releases cannot exceed the amount you enter in this field. We'll set a maximum line amount of $100,000 for coronary stents. When you enter a maximum line amount value, the system tracks the total amount spent against this maximum and displays the remaining amount and remaining amount percentage. There aren't any orders released against the coordinary stents for this contract, which is why the total released amount is blank and the remaining amount is $100,000. After we demonstrate how to create a purchase order for coronary stents, we'll return to this page to see how the system tracks the amount spent and updates these values. The Release Quantity tab is similar to the Release Amount tab and can be used to review total line quantity released or to set minimum or maximum quantities. An example of a minimum quantity might be that the supplier agrees to sell coronary stents, but only if you purchase 10 at a time. Or you might have a maximum because your supplier agrees to sell 1,000 stents at a special contracted price. However, after you have purchased 1,000 stents, you can no longer use the contracted price for subsequent orders. Besides being able to set a threshold and notification at the contract header level, you can also set thresholds and notifications at the contract line level. You can drill down to view more details about each line item from any of the Contract Items tabs. After setting up distributor and manufacturer contracts and establishing their relationships to each other, you can start ordering against these contracts and improve your spend management. Let's add a new purchase order and order from our distributor, Offens & Major. Recall that we viewed the contract for Offens & Major, and Offens & Major is one of the distributors for Boston Scientific. Let's order 100 coronary stents and have the stents shipped to WonderCare Warehouse. Let's verify the ship to for this order line. You can see that the system default is to ship to WonderCare Warehouse. Now let's order another 100 stents. Instead of shipping the stents to WonderCare Warehouse, let's ship them to the General Hospital Warehouse. Notice that the price for the coronary stents for line 1 is different from line 2. This is due to the differences in the Ship-to markups. From the Item Information tab, you can see that the item details for the contract carries over to the purchase order. Also notice that the GTIN information is tracked on the transaction. We're going to save and approve this order totaling $12,967.50. On the Contract tab, we see that the system selected contract WMF 0000005 for both line orders. Let's access the contract to view the changes that reflect these order releases. We've selected the contract number that was listed on the purchase order. The released amount has increased due to the purchase order we just processed. Let's look at the released amount by item in the Contract Items section. Notice how the released amount for coronary stents reflects the purchase order we just processed. In addition, the system updated the total line quantity released. The quantity ordered was originally 0 and now reflects the 200 coronary stents just ordered. You can also view updated released information from the distributor contract. Notice that the total released amount increased due to the coronary stents order. You can view released amounts by manufacturer from the Details tab. Let's look at the released amounts for Boston Scientific, which is the third row. The released amount for Boston Scientific has increased because of the purchase order we processed. The last feature that we're going to demonstrate is the Payment Spend Analysis feature. In Update Image 32, we added a new tile to the Procurement Operations homepage called Payment Spend Analysis. Let's view the new Payment Spend Analysis pivot grid. This pivot grid ties payment spend data to procurement data such as purchase order contracts and supplier data, so you can track and analyze paid and expensed spend amounts. You can display spend data in a variety of ways using filters and facets such as supplier, AP business unit, purchase order spend versus non-purchase order spend, and so forth. The delivered default chart shows you payment amount totals by payment month. The colors for each month tell you what suppliers were paid. Using the PO spend type facet, let's change the chart to analyze what's been paid against purchase orders versus no purchase order. This graph shows you which suppliers you've paid without a purchase order. You can use the contract spend type facet to change your pivot. This pivot shows contract versus non-contract spend. You can also drill down to research a specific payment and take action directly from this page. For example, drill down to view more details about the large non-contract spend to British Technology Supplies. Use the Action button to inquire on voucher details or payment details. When using the new payment spend analysis page, keep in mind that searches are performed against your real-time transaction data. There is no process running in the background to collect and stage the data. You can view 30, 60, or 90 days of data, or choose your own date range. 30 days is the default. Use the Pivot Grid Options menu to save your defaults, change chart options, add a threshold, and so forth. This operates the same as any pivot grid. This concludes the demo portion of the Spotlight. You have seen how the 6 new enhancements work in combination with each other to enhance your procurement operations. Let's do a quick review. Manufacturer and distributor contracts strengthen your ability to maintain compliance with set policies and pricing. They help your organization to conform to the standard processes that you use to monitor contract released amounts and quantities. This ensures that contract terms and conditions are met. The Punchout and Adhoc item pricing feature allows you to establish item pricing for Punchout suppliers. You can then set policy over which price to use. When exceptions happen, you can run a discrepancy report to identify when a Punchout price differs from a contract price. This report allows you to correct these differences with your supplier. Implementing these enhancements reduces maverick spend. PeopleSoft Procurement Contracts provides visibility to departmental spend. You can quickly and easily view contracts and agreements because everything is online. For example, contract released amounts can be viewed and monitored from the distributor contract perspective or from the manufacturer contract. The Payment Spend Analysis page allows you to view and monitor paid and expensed amounts by comparing standard contract versus non-contract spend. Lastly, using the Threshold and Notification feature informs users of contracts that are ready to expire or are close to the maximum threshold. Usability improvements include the redesigned contract entry pages. Using contract styles to tailor your contract entry pages allow you to turn off features you are not using for streamlined data entry. Configurable pricing gives you the flexibility to set markups by business unit, contract domain, and ship-to location. Control types, distributor contract priority settings, and the ability to store UPN information on Punchout and description-only items improves automation and control. You are not burdened with unnecessary manual steps or having to train end users to select the best contract because the best contract is automatically selected. These features are rich in functionality and improve procurement operations. For additional resources on distributor and manufacturer contracts, refer to PeopleSoft Online Help under Creating Distributor and Manufacturer Contracts. For general information about procurement contracts, refer to Using Voucher and Order Contracts in PeopleSoft Online Help. For more information on contract matching, refer to the Understanding Procurement Contract Default Rules section within the Using Voucher and Order Contracts section in PeopleSoft Online Help, and refer to the PeopleSoft Information Portal at PeopleSoftInfo.com.